I was before the jail on Tuesday night, but missed you in the crowd. I was out last night too. There was good work last night. Gay work. Profitable work,' he added, rattling the money in his pockets. 'Have you seen your good lady?' 'Yes.' 'Do you mean to tell me more, or not?' 'I'll tell you all,' returned the blind man with a laugh. 'Excuse me, but I love to see you so impatient. There's energy in it. Does she consent to say the word that may save me?' 'No,' returned the blind man emphatically, as he turned his face towards him. 'No. Thus it is. She has been at death's door since she lost her darling, has been insensible, and I know not what. I tracked her to hospital, and presented myself, with your leave, at her bedside. Our talk was not a long one, for she was weak, and there being people near, I was not quite easy. But I told her all that you and I agreed upon, and pointed out the young gentleman's position in strong terms. She tried to soften me, but that, of course, as I told her, was lost time. She cried and moaned, you may be sure, all women do. Then of a sudden she found her voice and strength, and said that Heaven would help her and her innocent son, and that to Heaven she appealed against us, which she did, in really very pretty language, I assure you. I advised her, as a friend, not to count too much on assistance from any such distant quarter, recommended her to think of it, told her where I lived, said I knew she would send to me before noon next day, and left her, either in a faint or shamming.' When he had concluded this narration, during which he had made several pauses, for the convenience of cracking and eating nuts, of which he seemed to have a pocketful, the blind man pulled a flask from his pocket, took a draught himself, and offered it to his companion. 'You won't you?' he said, feeling that he pushed it from him. 'Well, then the gallant gentleman who's lodging with you will. Hallo, bully!' 'Death!' said the other, holding him back. 'Will you tell me what I am to do?' 'Do? Nothing easier. Make a moonlight flitting in 2 hours' time with the young gentleman, he's quite ready to go, I've been giving him good advice as we came along, and get as far from London as you can. Let me know where you are, and leave the rest to me. She must come round. She can't hold out long. And as to the chances of your being retaken in the meanwhile, why, it wasn't one man who got out of Newgate, but 300. Think of that, for your comfort. We must support life. How?' 'How?' repeated the blind man. 'By eating and drinking. And how get meat and drink, but by paying for it? Money!' he cried, slapping his pocket. 'Is money the word? Why, the streets have been running money. Devil send that the sport's not over yet, for these are jolly times, golden, rare, roaring, scrambling times. Hallo, bully! Hallo, hallo! Drink, bully, drink! Where are ye there? Hallo!' With such vociferations, and with a boisterous manner which bespoke his perfect abandonment to the general licence and disorder, he groped his way towards the shed, where Hugh and Barnaby were sitting on the ground. 'Put it about!' he cried, handing his flask to Hugh. 'The kennels run with wine and gold. Guineas and strong water flow from the very pumps. About with it. Don't spare it.' Exhausted, unwashed, unshorn, begrimed with smoke and dust, his hair clotted with blood, his voice quite gone, so that he spoke in whispers, his skin parched up by fever, his whole body bruised and cut and beaten about, Hugh still took the flask, and raised it to his lips. He was in the act of drinking, when the front of the shed was suddenly darkened, and Dennis stood before them. 'No offence, no offence,' said that personage in a conciliatory tone, as Hugh stopped in his draught, and eyed him with no pleasant look, from head to foot. 'No offence, brother. Barnaby here too, eh? How are you, Barnaby? And 2 other gentlemen. Your humble servant, gentlemen. No offence to you either, I hope, brothers?' Notwithstanding that he spoke in this very friendly and confident manner, he seemed to have considerable hesitation about entering, and remained outside the roof. He was rather better dressed than usual, wearing the same suit of threadbare black, it is true, but having round his neck an unwholesome looking cravat of a yellowish white, and on his hands great leather gloves, such as a gardener might wear in following his trade. His shoes were newly greased, and ornamented with a pair of rusty iron buckles. The packthread at his knees had been renewed, and where he wanted buttons, he wore pins. Altogether he had something the look of a tipstaff or a bailiff's follower, desperately faded, but who had a notion of keeping up the appearance of a professional character, and making the best of the worst means. 'You're very snug here,' said Mr Dennis, pulling out a mouldy pocket-handkerchief which looked like a decomposed halter, and wiping his forehead in a nervous manner. 'Not snug enough to prevent your finding us, it seems,' Hugh answered sulkily. 'Why, I'll tell you what, brother,' said Dennis with a friendly smile, 'when you don't want me to know which way you're riding, you must wear another sort of bells on your horse. Ah, I know the sound of them you wore last night, and have got quick ears for 'em, that's the truth. Well, but how are you, brother?' He had by this time approached, and now ventured to sit down by him. 'How am I?' answered Hugh. 'Where were you yesterday? Where did you go when you left me in the jail? Why did you leave me? And what did you mean by rolling your eyes and shaking your fist at me, eh?' 'I shake my fist at you, brother?' said Dennis, gently checking Hugh's uplifted hand, which looked threatening. 'Your stick, then. It's all one. Lord love you, brother, I meant nothing. You don't understand me by half, I shouldn't wonder now,' he added in the tone of a desponding and an injured man. 'But you thought, because I wanted them chaps left in the prison, that I was a going to desert the Banners?' Hugh told him, with an oath, that he had thought so. 'Well,' said Mr Dennis mournfully, 'if you aren't enough to make a man mistrust his fellow creeturs, I don't know what is. Desert the Banners! Me, Ned Dennis, as was so christened by his own father! Is this axe yourn, brother?' 'Yes, it's mine,' said Hugh in the same sullen manner as before. 'It might have hurt you if you had come in its way once or twice last night. Put it down.' 'Might have hurt me,' said Mr Dennis, still keeping it in his hand, and feeling the edge with an air of abstraction. 'Might have hurt me, and me exerting myself all the time to the wery best advantage. Here's a world! And you're not a going to ask me to take a sup out of that here bottle, eh?' Hugh passed it towards him. As he raised it to his lips, Barnaby jumped up, and motioning them to be silent, looked eagerly out. 'What's the matter, Barnaby?' said Dennis, glancing at Hugh and dropping the flask, but still holding the axe in his hand. 'Hush!' he answered softly. 'What do I see glittering behind the hedge?' 'What!' cried the hangman, raising his voice to its highest pitch, and laying hold of him and Hugh. 'Not soldiers, surely?' That moment the shed was filled with armed men, and a body of horse, galloping into the field, drew up before it. 'There!' said Dennis, who remained untouched among them when they had seized their prisoners. 'It's them 2 young ones, gentlemen, that the proclamation puts a price on. This other's an escaped felon. I'm sorry for it, brother. he added in a tone of resignation, addressing himself to Hugh.